The message came to Earth on a quiet morning. It carried the seal of the Galactic Council, a symbol recognized by every major spacefaring species. The Council's words were formal, polite, and full of ceremony. They invited humanity to send a representative to join the next session on the grand station called Lumeris Prime. For humans, this was more than a meeting. It was the first time they had been invited to stand among the oldest and most influential civilizations in the galaxy. Some nations on Earth celebrated the news. Others felt nervous. The galaxy was wide and full of powers that had existed for thousands of years, while humans had only just begun to explore the stars. After long discussion, Earth's leaders decided to send Daniel. He was not a soldier nor a loud politician. Daniel was a diplomat who had a calm voice, a clear mind, and a way of speaking that put others at ease. He was known for one simple thing. He always smiled, no matter how tense the moment. It was not a forced or mocking smile, but a warm one, as though he believed there was always a peaceful path forward. Daniel prepared for the journey without drama. He packed a few changes of clothes, some data tablets with important files, and a small case containing gifts from Earth. When asked if he wanted a guard escort, he shook his head gently. He said that when you arrive with weapons, you invite fear. When you arrive with only your voice, you invite trust. His transport ship was a smooth silver vessel called the Morning Star. It was small, built for speed and comfort rather than defense. The journey to Lumeris Prime took 5 days through deep space. Daniel spent the time reading about the cultures of the Council's many member species. He studied their customs, their preferred greetings, and their rules of conduct. He also spent hours looking out at the stars, his expression peaceful, his mind already picturing the meeting hall where he would soon stand. When the Morning Star finally arrived, Lumeris Prime filled the forward view. The station was enormous, shaped like a shining ring with towers rising from its outer edge. Bright lines of light traced along its structure, and dozens of starships moved in and out of its docking bays. From a distance, it looked like a jewel set against the black of space. Inside, the docking bay was full of sound and movement. Crews in colorful uniforms guided ships to their berths. Traders hurried past with floating carts full of goods. The IB air carried a mix of scents from different worlds, spices, metals, and something like fresh rain. Daniel stepped down from his ship with his case in hand. He was met by an attendant, a tall being with a thin frame, long silver hair, and skin that shimmered faintly in the station lights. The attendant introduced himself simply as Rollin and spoke in a voice that sounded like flowing water. "Welcome, Representative Daniel of Earth," Raylan said with a polite bow. "The Council is pleased you have accepted the invitation." Daniel returned the bow and answered with a smile. "Thank you. It is an honor to be here." Raylan led him through wide corridors with walls that displayed images of Council history. Holographic murals showed peaceful gatherings, moments of discovery, and the signing of great treaties. Other delegates moved past, some tall and graceful, some short and round, some moving on many legs, others gliding without touching the floor. Many glanced at Daniel with curiosity. Humanity was still a rare sight in these halls. As they walked, Raylan spoke of the schedule. "The opening session begins tomorrow. Today you will be shown your quarters and given time to rest. In the evening, there will be a welcoming reception for all delegates." Daniel nodded and listened carefully, but his eyes also moved over the details of the station. He noticed the subtle patterns on the walls, the way certain corridors curved to create a feeling of openness, and the faint hum of energy systems deep within the structure. His quarters were spacious, with a wide window looking out at the stars and the curve of the station's ring. A table in the center held a bowl of fresh fruit from several worlds, each piece labeled with its name and origin. Daniel set down his case and took a moment to simply stand by the window. The view was quiet, and yet full of movement. Ships, drifting past, lights winking across the darkness, the slow turn of the station. Later, at the reception, Daniel was introduced to delegates from across the galaxy. There was Malin of the Coran Union, who spoke in a voice that rumbled like stone. There was Joran of the Valan Compact, whose eyes shifted color with each emotion. Each conversation was polite, though Daniel sensed that some smiles were thin and practiced. One delegate, a broad-shouldered figure from the Grath Dominion, studied him longer than most. "Earth is young in the stars," the Grath said slowly. "We wonder if you are ready for the weight of the council." Daniel's smile did not change. "Youth can listen as well as speak," he replied. "And sometimes a new voice can offer a fresh path." The Grath made no answer, only gave a small nod before moving on. When the evening ended, Daniel returned to his quarters. He reviewed the documents for tomorrow's session, then set them aside. Instead, he stood at the window, again watching the endless night beyond. Somewhere among the stars lay the many homes of the Council's species. Somewhere out there, humanity's own future was taking shape. He knew that not everyone would welcome Earth's place in the Council. Some would see it as a chance for trade and peace. Others would see it as competition. Daniel did not fear this. A smile was often mistaken for weakness, but he knew it could also be a shield, and when needed, a weapon. For now, though, the station was quiet, and the stars shone without. Hurry, tomorrow would come soon enough. Morning on Lumeris Prime began not with sunlight, but with the soft glow of the station's simulated dawn. The walls in Daniel's quarters shifted from deep blue to a warm golden hue, and gentle tones played through hidden speakers. Outside, his window, ships drifted past, their hulls catching the light of nearby stars. Daniel dressed in a simple dark suit and reviewed the day's schedule. The opening session of the Galactic Council would begin in just 2 hours. It would be the first time he stepped into the Grand Assembly Hall, a place where decisions could shape the future of dozens of worlds. He left his quarters early, preferring to walk the long corridors instead of taking the transport lifts. Along the way, he saw more delegates arriving, their assistants carrying datapads and cases. Some nodded to him in passing, their expressions neutral. Others stared openly, curiosity in their eyes. The Grand Assembly Hall stood at the heart of the station, its entrance guarded by tall doors of polished metal carved with the Council's crest. Inside, the space was vast, with tiered seating that curved around a central speaking platform. The ceiling rose high above, displaying a view of the galaxy through a transparent dome. It was a place designed to inspire both awe and respect. Daniel took his assigned seat near the outer edge of the circle, where newer member worlds were usually placed. As he settled in, a soft chime rang out, signaling the start of the session. The council chair, an elegant being with wings folded neatly behind their back, welcomed all delegates. The chair spoke of unity, trade, and mutual understanding. Their voice carried across the hall like music. Daniel listened closely, but his attention was also on the faces of those around him. He noticed a small cluster of delegates seated together on the opposite side. They leaned toward each other, whispering in low tones. Every so often, one of them glanced in his direction. During a short break, Rollin, the station attendant who had greeted him yesterday, approached his seat. "Representative Daniel," Raylan said in a quiet voice, "some members of the council are not pleased with humanity's arrival. It may be wise to avoid certain political disputes today." Daniel tilted his head slightly. "Disputes often find you even when you avoid them," he said. His smile was calm, but his eyes showed that he understood. The rest of the morning session passed without incident. Speeches were made, trade agreements discussed, and minor disputes settled. When the final chime rang, the delegates rose and began to leave. Daniel remained for a moment, gathering his notes and placing them neatly in his case. Outside the hall, the air felt different, heavier somehow. Groups of delegates moved together, speaking in quick, hushed voices. Daniel could not hear their words, but he could feel the attention on him. He stepped aside to allow others to pass, and then began walking toward the station gardens, a place he had heard was peaceful and open to all guests. The gardens were a wide, circular space filled with plants from many worlds. Some had tall silver, leaves that caught the light like mirrors. Others grew in twisted spirals or glowed faintly in the dim corners. Soft paths curved through the greenery, and streams of clear water flowed between smooth stones. Daniel walked slowly, taking in the scents and sounds. A group of small bird-like creatures darted between branches, singing in a language that no translator could capture. For a brief moment, he felt as if he were back on Earth, walking in a quiet park at the edge of a city. But the peace did not last. From the far end of the path, 3 figures stepped into view. They were tall, each wearing a plain travel cloak, and they moved with a purpose that was hard to miss. Daniel noticed that their eyes were fixed on him and that their steps matched his own pace. They stopped when they were only a few meters away. The one in the middle spoke first. "Human," they said in a flat tone. "You are far from your home. Do you understand how easily voices can be silenced in places like this?" Daniel looked at the speaker without any sign of alarm. "Every voice can be silenced," he replied, "but some ideas are harder to erase." His tone was mild, and the faint curve of his lips remained unchanged. The figure on the left gave a short laugh that held no humor. "You speak as if you matter here. You do not. This council is not a place for your kind. You should return to your world before you find yourself unwelcome in ways you cannot imagine." Daniel studied their faces, noting the sharp set of their jaws and the tension in their shoulders. He did not step back, nor did he raise his voice. "If I am unwelcome," he said gently, "then perhaps you should speak to the council chair. I am here by their invitation." For a moment, the 3 figures simply stood there. Then the middle one gave a small nod to the others, and they stepped aside, allowing Daniel to pass. As he walked by, he could feel their eyes on his back. When Daniel left the garden, Raylan was waiting near the entrance. "I saw them speaking to you," Raylan said, concern clear in his voice. "That group is part of a coalition that has opposed every attempt to expand the council. They see new members as threats to their influence." Daniel's smile did not fade. "Threats often depend on the point of view," he answered. "Some see competition, others see opportunity." Raylan hesitated, as if wanting to say more, but then simply bowed and escorted Daniel back toward his quarters. That night, as he sat by his window once more, Daniel considered the day's events. It was clear that not everyone wanted humanity in the Council. It was equally clear that the opposition was not limited to words. Still, Daniel felt no fear. He knew that calm could be more unsettling than anger, and that patience often achieved more than force. Somewhere deep inside, he also knew that the path ahead would test not just his diplomacy, but something far older within him, something the galaxy had yet to learn about humans. Tomorrow, the true challenges would begin. The next morning began quietly. A soft mist clung to the inner gardens of Lumeris Prime, drifting in slow waves beneath the station's artificial lights. Daniel had risen early, long before the Council's session was due to begin. He preferred to take the first hours of the day for himself, walking in silence and allowing his mind to settle. Today, he chose the Western Garden, a place less visited by the other delegates. The paths there curved between tall green walls of plants, some with wide leaves like sails, others with thin fronds that moved gently in the artificial breeze. A narrow stream ran alongside the main walkway, its clear water carrying the faint scent of minerals from a world far from Earth. Daniel walked without hurry, his small case in one hand. Inside were the day's documents, along with a few small gifts he had prepared for certain delegates. He believed that simple gestures could open doors more effectively than speeches. As he turned a corner, he became aware that the garden was unusually still. The faint chirps of the bird-like creatures he had seen yesterday were gone. Even the hum of the station's background system seemed softer here. Ahead, 3 figures stepped into view from a side path. Daniel recognized them at once. They were the same individuals who had spoken to him in the gardens the previous day. The coalition members who had made their disapproval clear. Today, however, they were not alone. 2 more figures moved in behind Daniel, their footsteps quiet on the stone path. The 5 strangers formed a loose circle around him. None wore the formal colors of their delegations. Instead, each was dressed in plain travel cloaks, hoods raised, to shadow their faces. The one in the center of the path ahead spoke first. "You were warned," the voice said, calm but without warmth. "Yet, here you are." Daniel stopped walking. His posture was relaxed, his shoulders straight, his face still carrying that small, steady smile. "I was invited to speak for my people," he said. "Leaving would dishonor both that invitation and those I represent." One of the figures behind him stepped closer. "We do not wish to hear your people's voice, and we will not allow it." Daniel slowly set his case on the ground beside the stream. He straightened again, his hands loosely at his sides. "This is a council station," he said quietly. "If you have concerns, there are proper channels." "There are faster channels," the middle figure replied. For a moment, no one moved. The air seemed heavier, the mist thicker. Daniel looked from one hooded face to another. His eyes were calm, almost thoughtful, as though he were making quiet calculations. Then the circle shifted. The 2 behind him took a step forward, and the 3 in front closed the gap. It was a slow, deliberate movement, meant to test his reaction. Daniel's smile did not change. "You seem certain that I should be afraid," he said. "Yet you have not considered what it means for a human to walk into a place like this alone." One of the figures tilted their head. "And what does it mean?" "It means," Daniel answered, "that he is either a fool or something you have not yet understood." The words hung in the air for a long moment. Then, in a motion so quick, it seemed almost to blur, Daniel stepped forward. There was no sound of struggle, no raised voices, only the quiet rhythm of feet shifting on stone and the soft swish of fabric. The mist seemed to swallow the movement. A short time later, the garden was still again. The 5 figures were no longer blocking the path. Some leaned against the plant-covered walls, heads bowed, as if deep in thought. Others stood to the side, looking away from Daniel without a word. Daniel picked up his case from beside the stream. His suit remained neat, not a crease out of place. The faint smell of the garden's flowers drifted past as he began walking again, his pace as unhurried as before. When he reached the far exit of the garden, a pair of station security officers appeared. They had likely been drawn by reports of unusual activity. One stepped forward. "Representative Daniel," the officer said, "we heard there may have been an incident here. Are you unharmed?" Daniel gave the same calm smile he always wore. "I had a short conversation with some other guests," he said. "It has been resolved." The officer glanced past him toward the mist-shrouded path, as though expecting to see signs of trouble. There were none. After a pause, the officer nodded slowly and stepped aside, allowing Daniel to continue on his way. As he made his way back toward the central corridors of Lumeris Prime, Daniel could feel eyes on him from passing delegates. Word traveled quickly in places like this, and the sight of the human diplomat walking calmly from the Western Garden would no doubt start many new conversations. When he reached his quarters, Raylan was waiting outside. The station attendant's expression was one of concern. "There have been rumors already," Raylan said. "They say members of the coalition confronted you this morning." Daniel opened his door and gestured for Raylan to step inside. "Rumors often grow larger than the truth," he replied. "I went for a walk. I met some other delegates. We spoke. That is all." Raylan studied his face for a long moment, perhaps looking for any sign that the words were less than complete. But Daniel's expression remained steady, his voice even. "The eye. Council session will begin soon," Raylan finally said. "There may be questions." "Then I will answer them," Daniel said. After Raylan left, Daniel stood by the wide window once more. The stars beyond were bright and cold, the same as they had been yesterday, the same as they would be tomorrow. Somewhere in those stars were worlds that still thought of humans as fragile newcomers. Daniel knew better. The council chamber was full long before the session began. Delegates filled their assigned seats, while quiet conversations passed between them. Today's agenda was routine on paper, trade routes, diplomatic updates, and minor disputes, but the air carried a different kind of energy. Rumors had moved quickly through Lumeris Prime. Whispers told of an early morning meeting in the Western Garden between the human representative and several members of the coalition. Some said it had been a heated exchange. Others claimed it had been something more, though no one could explain exactly what had happened. The only fact all agreed on was that Daniel had walked out alone, calm and unmarked. Daniel arrived as he always did, on time, with his small case in one hand, a polite nod to the station guards, and the same warm, steady smile. He moved through the chamber without hurry, taking his seat among the newer member worlds. His manner was exactly as it had been on the first day, as if nothing unusual had occurred at all. From across the chamber, Malin of the Coran Union studied him with interest. "That one," Malin murmured to a fellow delegate, "either has no fear or hides it very well." The session began with the council chair calling the assembly to order. Matters proceeded smoothly for the first hour. Delegates spoke, proposals were made, votes were taken. Daniel listened carefully, taking occasional notes on his tablet but offering no comment. Then a representative from the coalition rose and requested the floor. This was Vren of the Dolar Pact, a tall figure with a sharp, narrow face and pale, deep-set eyes. Vren's voice carried clearly across the chamber. "Honored Chair," Vren began, "there is a matter not on today's agenda, but one that should concern every member present. It concerns the safety of delegates within these halls." The chair's wings shifted slightly, a sign of curiosity. "Proceed." Vren turned to face Daniel's side of the chamber. "It has come to my attention that certain individuals were seen entering the Western Garden this morning at the same time. As the representative from Earth, it has also been noted that those individuals left in a less than composed state." A quiet ripple moved through the chamber. Many eyes turned toward Daniel. Vren continued, "While I do not accuse anyone directly, it is clear that some form of confrontation took place. I believe we must question whether all delegates are conducting themselves in a manner befitting this council." Daniel rose slowly, setting his case gently on the desk. "Honored Chair," he said, his voice even and calm, "I welcome any questions the council may have for me. I will answer them as clearly as I can." The chair nodded. "You may speak." Daniel looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of several delegates in turn. "This morning I went for a walk in the Western Garden before the session. There I encountered 5 delegates from various member states. We exchanged words about my presence here. After a short discussion, we went our separate ways." Vren's eyes narrowed. "A short discussion? Yet witnesses saw those 5 leaving as if they had been persuaded." Daniel kept his gaze steady. "Sometimes persuasion comes not from force, but from the realization that continuing down a path will not bring the result one hopes for." A few quiet murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates leaned toward one another, whispering. Others watched Daniel with a new kind of focus. Vren pressed further. "And how did you achieve this realization?" Daniel's smile remained unchanged. "By listening and by letting them listen in return." The chair regarded him thoughtfully. "Representative Daniel, do you claim that nothing improper occurred?" "I claim," Daniel said softly, "that we spoke, we understood one another, and no harm was done." For a moment, the chamber was silent except for the faint hum of the station's systems. Then the chair spoke. "Very well. The Council reminds all delegates that disagreements must be handled within the bounds of our rules. We will proceed with today's agenda." Daniel sat down again, his expression unchanged, but he could feel the weight of the glances directed at him, some skeptical, some curious, and a few that carried the beginning of respect. When the session ended, Malin approached him in the corridor. The tall Koran's deep voice was low and deliberate. Many here wonder what you are, human. They think you hide behind polite words, but I think your words are not the shield. They are the door. And behind the door is something they do not yet understand. Daniel's smile deepened just slightly. Perhaps understanding will come with time. Later, in his quarters, Raylan entered carrying a message from the chair's office. "You have been invited to a private reception tonight," Raylan said. "Only senior delegates will attend. It is considered an honor." Daniel thanked him and placed the message on the table. Outside the window, the station's lights shimmered against the darkness of space. He could feel the shift in the way others saw him. Yesterday, some had looked at him as a newcomer to be dismissed. Today, they looked at him as a puzzle, one they were not sure how to solve. He knew the whispers would continue to grow. Every unanswered question would add to the mystery, and mystery, Daniel understood, could be more powerful than an open display of strength. The galaxy was beginning to watch him closely. That was exactly what he wanted. By the following day, the story had grown into something larger than the event itself. On Lumeris Prime, information traveled faster than any ship. A quiet conversation in one corridor could become a full tale by the time it reached the next level of the station. Delegates whispered in the dining halls, in the transport lifts, even in the formal meeting spaces where silence was meant to be observed. Some said the human had faced 5 attackers and sent them away without a single mark on himself. Others claimed he had not moved at all, that something in his presence alone had made them step aside. A few swore they saw the coalition delegates leaving the garden looking pale, their voices hushed, their steps unsteady. Daniel moved through the station as if unaware of these whispers. He greeted everyone he met, whether they returned the greeting or not. He attended the council sessions, spoke only when his turn came, and always left the chamber calmly. His days followed a steady rhythm: morning walks, diplomatic meetings, quiet evenings in his quarters. Nothing in his manner gave away that anything unusual had happened at all, and yet the change in how others looked at him was clear. On the first day, many had not even glanced in his direction. Now, eyes followed him in the corridors. Some nodded politely. Others kept their distance. A few seemed to study him as though trying to solve a riddle. At lunch in the delegates' dining hall, Malin of the Koran Union sat across from him without asking. The tall, stone-voiced representative placed a tray of food on the table and leaned forward. "You have become a story," Malin said. Daniel looked up from the bowl of fruit he had been eating. "Stories change depending on who tells them." Malin nodded slowly. "True. But some stories grow because they answer a question others are too cautious to ask." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "And what question is that?" Malin held his gaze. "Whether humans are like other young species, or whether there is something in you that the galaxy has not yet measured." Daniel smiled, but said nothing. Silence, he knew, could carry more weight than a direct answer. Not far from their table, Vren of the Dolar Pact entered the hall with 2 other coalition delegates. They spoke quietly but kept glancing toward Daniel's table. When Daniel noticed, he gave them a polite nod. They did not return it. Later that afternoon, Raylan met Daniel at the entrance to the assembly hall. "I hear that your name is now mentioned in every private meeting," the attendant said. "Some speak with interest, others with unease." "Interest and unease are close neighbors," Daniel replied. Often they live in the same house. The day's session was uneventful, but after it ended, Daniel took a different route back to his quarters. The corridors here were narrower, lined with windows that looked out into the docking bays. He passed workers guiding cargo drones and pilots checking their ships. A few stopped to watch him pass, their expressions unreadable. Near one of the smaller lifts, Daniel paused. Two younger aides from different delegations were speaking in low voices nearby. They did not notice him at first. They say he has training from some hidden human program, one whispered. No, the other replied. I heard he carries some kind of device, something that can disable anyone who comes near. Daniel stepped into the lift before they noticed him. As the doors closed, his faint smile remained. Let them guess, he thought. Guessing made people cautious. That evening, he attended the private reception in the chair's residence. The gathering was small, no more than 20 senior delegates. The room was bright, with tall windows showing the stars beyond. Light music played in the background, and the tables were set with dishes from across the galaxy. Daniel moved easily among the guests, speaking briefly with each. Some conversations were light, about art, about the growing season on certain worlds. Others were sharper, hidden beneath polite words. A representative from the Talav League asked if humans intended to expand their fleet soon. A trade minister from the Naran Enclave inquired whether Earth's industries could produce military equipment at scale. To each question, Daniel answered with the same calm tone. He spoke of cooperation, of peaceful exchange, of shared benefits. And all the while, the quiet smile stayed in place. As the evening ended, the chair approached him. Representative Daniel, they said, the council is watching you. Some see your presence as a step toward unity. Others see it as the beginning of a shift they cannot control. Daniel inclined his head. I understand. Do you? The chair asked. Daniel's eyes held a calm certainty. I understand that change is rarely comfortable, but it comes whether we prepare for it or not. The chair regarded him for a moment longer, then simply nodded and moved on. Back in his quarters, Daniel placed his case on the desk and sat by the wide window. The station moved silently through space, its lights gleaming against the dark. He knew the coalition would not stop with whispers. They had already tested his resolve once, and they had learned nothing they could use to remove him. But he also knew the rumors now served him. The more uncertain others were about who he was and what he could do, the more carefully they would treat him, and by extension, humanity. In the galaxy, fear could divide, but respect could bind. And sometimes, the path to respect began with a single unanswered question. The morning on Lumeris Prime began with a quiet hum of activity. Ships arrived at the docking bays, carrying delegates from the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Couriers ran messages from one chamber to another, and the station's artificial sunlight shifted to reflect the rotation of the orbital platform. Daniel moved through the halls with his usual calm, but he felt the tension building. Rumors had already reached every corner of the council, and some of the senior delegates had decided it was time to test him. A private meeting had been arranged, under the guise of diplomatic discussion, but Daniel knew the intention behind it. When he arrived at the secure chamber, he found 5 delegates waiting. They represented the Dolar Pact, the Talav League, the Koran Union, and 2 independent systems. Each delegate carried the air of authority, the kind that expected compliance rather than discussion. Vren of the Dolar Pact spoke first. Representative? Daniel, the Council has grown concerned about the events of the past few days. Your presence, your influence, and the outcome of the morning encounter have created unease among several members. Daniel nodded politely. I understand concern, but I assure you, my purpose here is cooperation, not conflict. Malin of the Koran Union leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Yet, cooperation does not explain the stories, human. 5 delegates enter a conversation with you and leave changed. Some say frightened, some say confused. What is your explanation? Daniel's smile was calm, but his voice carried quiet authority. I do not frighten or confuse. I listen, I speak, and I allow others to see the consequences of their own choices. That is all. One of the independent delegates, a small, bird-like figure named Etris, tilted their head. Choices? Are you saying that they chose to leave as they did? Daniel's gaze was steady. Yes. Every being here has the ability to choose. Sometimes realizing the right choice is enough to prevent conflict. Vren's hand tightened around the edge of the table. Your words are clever, human. But words alone do not inspire such reactions. There is something more. We have heard your presence carries weight, physical, mental, or otherwise. Is this true? Daniel leaned back slightly. If my presence alone inspires thought, then perhaps that is all it is. The galaxy has underestimated humanity for centuries. Today, you are beginning to measure it correctly. The delegates exchanged glances. Etris whispered to their companion, and even Malin appeared slightly uncertain. Vren's sharp eyes did not waver, but a small flicker of caution showed. Measure it correctly? Vren repeated. Explain yourself. Daniel stood slowly, placing both hands on the table. The room seemed to quiet further, though no sound could account for it. Humans have learned, through hardship and challenge, to act decisively when necessary. We have faced enemies who could have destroyed us, and yet we endured. We adapted. We advanced. That is our nature. The Koran representative's wings twitched slightly. You speak as if every human is like you. Are they? Daniel's eyes did not leave theirs. Not every human, but humanity as a whole has potential that few other species have yet understood. You see only the surface. I offer a glimpse below. Vren leaned forward, voice tight. A glimpse? Are you threatening the Council? Daniel shook his head. Not threatening. Demonstrating. Fear arises from misunderstanding, not from knowledge. When you understand what a species can do, respect follows naturally. The room fell silent. Even Etris, who had been the most vocal in questioning him, did not speak. The weight of Daniel's calm, measured words filled the space, leaving the delegates to consider what he meant. Finally, Malin spoke. You are different from the humans. I expected. Most young species we meet are cautious, eager to blend in, or weak. You are something else entirely. Daniel smiled. We are capable, that is all. But the galaxy often forgets this when judging by appearances alone. Vren's eyes narrowed again, but there was a new tension in them, a realization that they had miscalculated. You are saying humanity is stronger than we assumed? Yes, Daniel replied softly. Stronger in ways you cannot measure with weapons, or fleets size. Strength can be patience, intelligence, and foresight. Strength can be calm in the face of threat and kindness in the face of fear. The delegates shifted uncomfortably. Even those who had doubted him now felt the weight of his words. There was no boast, no threat, no show of power. And yet the effect was undeniable. Malin exhaled slowly. Perhaps we have judged too quickly. Etris nodded, wings folding closer to their body. Perhaps we have. Vren's jaw tightened, then relaxed slightly. Human, you have proven one thing today. You are not to be underestimated. But know this, many in the council will continue to watch. Caution is the only path when dealing with the unexpected. Daniel inclined his head. I would expect nothing less. It is wise to observe, to understand, and to act with care. That is a lesson the galaxy can benefit from. As the meeting ended, the delegates left in silence, their minds quietly reconsidering what they had thought they knew. Daniel remained standing for a moment, looking out the tall windows at the stars. The galaxy had begun to shift its perception. Rumors had become acknowledgement, whispers had become respect, and humanity's place, though still uncertain, had gained a foundation that could not be easily shaken. Daniel returned to his quarters that evening, calm and collected. He understood the road ahead would bring challenges. The coalition might test him again, and other species would continue to doubt and speculate. But he also knew this. One encounter had changed the course of perception. One demonstration of human resolve, intelligence, and patience had begun to make the galaxy see humanity not as a fledgling species, but as a power to reckon with. In the silence of his quarters, Daniel allowed himself a small smile. The council had tested him, and they had learned nothing they could use to weaken him. That knowledge alone was victory. The stars beyond Lumeris Prime sparkled quietly, as if acknowledging the beginning of something larger. The day began quietly on Lumeris Prime. The station hovered in orbit above a blue and green planet, its metal surfaces reflecting sunlight as ships came and went. Yet beneath the calm, tension rippled through the council. Rumors of the human representative's abilities and composure had spread like wildfire. Daniel walked through the corridors with the same calm he had carried since arriving. His presence seemed to steady those around him. Staff and delegates alike felt a strange reassurance, as if the human carried more than confidence. He carried certainty. The council chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of worlds. Today, a debate was scheduled to discuss trade agreements, military cooperation, and interstellar research programs. Normally, such discussions would be heated, with voices raised and tempers flaring. But when Daniel entered, silence fell. Even the most argumentative delegates paused to watch him approach. Malin of the Coran Union rose first. Representative Daniel, the council wishes to hear your proposal. Many of us are curious how a human views cooperation among species. Daniel nodded, standing at the center of the chamber. His voice was calm but carried a weight that drew attention. Thank you, Malin. I speak today not for one species, but for the potential of many. Humans have learned that survival and success come not from dominance, but from unity. Every species here has strengths that others do not. And every species has knowledge that, when shared, can benefit the galaxy. Etris of the independent systems leaned forward. And what does humanity propose specifically? Daniel smiled. We propose cooperation built on understanding, transparency, and shared goals. Humans have survived wars, natural disasters, and internal struggles. Through this, we have learned to solve problems efficiently and creatively. We offer that knowledge to any species willing to listen, learn, and collaborate. Vren of the Dolar Pact cleared his throat. You speak of cooperation, human. But we wonder how far your influence stretches. Can we trust that humanity will not pursue its own advantage at the expense of others? Daniel's eyes met Vren's steadily. Every species seeks its own survival. That is natural. But true advancement comes when survival is balanced with mutual benefit. Humans have learned that cooperation is often the stronger path. One does not need to dominate to prosper. The chamber was quiet. For the first time, the council did not challenge him further. Daniel's words carried clarity that even the most skeptical could not ignore. He continued, "We also propose training programs for diplomats and strategists, workshops on technology exchange, and open councils where ideas can be shared freely. No one species should control the outcome. The galaxy thrives when knowledge is widespread, when trust is earned, and when effort is collective." Malin's wings shifted, a gesture that signaled careful consideration. "Your proposal is ambitious." Daniel nodded. Ambition is necessary when the goal is growth. Small steps maintain the status quo. Large steps change the future. Humans have always taken the large steps, and we invite the galaxy to do the same. Etris tilted their head. And if some species refuse cooperation, what then? Daniel's gaze did not waver. We do not force compliance. We set examples. We demonstrate through actions, not threats. Others will see the benefits and decide for themselves. History shows that success is contagious. Humanity has survived because we adapt and inspire. That principle applies beyond our species. Vren exchanged a look with other delegates. They had hoped to intimidate, to see fear or hesitation in the human. Instead, they found calm, intelligence, and unshakable confidence. Finally, Malin spoke again. "Human, it seems your presence alone is enough to shift perception. We will discuss your proposal seriously. The Council will deliberate, but it is clear that humanity cannot be ignored." Daniel inclined his head. "That is all I ask. To be considered fairly, judged by actions, and respected for potential. Humanity does not seek conquest, only participation." The session ended, and delegates left the chamber quietly. Some whispered to each other, others paused to glance back at Daniel. He did not smile or call attention to himself. He simply observed, aware that the change he had set in motion would continue even when he was not present. Back in his quarters, Daniel reviewed reports from the day. Messages of cautious approval arrived from distant systems. Some delegates had already sent offers for technology exchange and diplomatic collaboration. The shift he had created was real and growing. He looked out at the stars beyond Lumeris Prime, calm but thoughtful. The galaxy was vast, filled with civilizations with centuries of knowledge. Humanity was young, but young did not mean weak. Humanity's strength lay in adaptability, intelligence, and perseverance. That combination could influence the galaxy more than fleets, more than weapons, more than fear. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. The future was uncertain, but it was promising. Every species in the Council would now see humanity differently. They would measure it not by appearances, but by actions and potential. That night, he recorded a message for the Human Council back on Earth. It was brief, but filled with clarity. Humanity's place in the galaxy is no longer underestimated. We have begun to show the galaxy that we are capable of cooperation, leadership, and progress. Challenges remain, but respect has been earned. We are seen, and we will continue to rise through patience, knowledge, and action. As he sent the message, Daniel knew this was only the beginning. Humanity's story in the stars had begun, not with weapons or dominance, but with intelligence, courage, and the quiet certainty that comes from knowing one's own strength. The galaxy, vast and unyielding, now held space for humanity, and humanity, ready and resolute, would take its place among the stars with honor, wisdom, and hope. The Council had tested the human, and in the end, it had learned that underestimating humanity was the first mistake it would never make again.